behalf of the licensed service provider.
Global digital economy. We must make sure we do it right. So we
think I don't think I've left out.
PS Broadcasting.
I think 25 years ago we did not envisage this kind of world. This world did not exist, but now it is here with us. We have artificial intelligence. We were just hit by the WorldCoin thing the other day. The whole world is thinking about it. Then cyber security is becoming a huge problem, and you cannot sit in government and say, because we have the gadgets, we can deal with cyber security alone. If you hit the public sector, you are also hitting government. You hit government, you are hitting the public sector.
We've got policies that have been sitting at ministry for years on end. Actually, some of the policies have been pending in ministry for over a decade. We've got legislation that is telling us that we might need a complete overhaul of the laws that are presiding over this sector. We've got regulations that are not matching up to the times that we are in. All of us here do understand what happened in 1998 when we made this mega transition from Kenya Post and Telecommunication Corporation to a place where we had quite a number of new novel and apt entities coming into play. And that came with the laws. One of the bigger laws was the Kenya Information and Communication Act, which has been presiding over the sector. But everything is telling us, starting from KICA, cascading down all the way to regulations, that it is that time that we probably need to move from the 2G generation to the 5G generation and beyond. Currently in Parliament, we are inquiring into the goings-on and the operations around WorldCoin. And this was a wake-up call, especially for Parliament, when we realized that there are so many new things that are happening that we are not able to respond to with the regulations, the legislations, and the policy that are available. So to my mind, this is going to be a great journey. What we need to do is to think through that sweet spot, the balance between over-regulating, over-legislating, over-policing sector, and stifling innovation. That if we think through these as elastoplast remedies, as we have been doing with the laws that exist, we might end up stifling so much innovation. And to my mind, it is very clear to the Committee of Communication, Information and Innovation that rather than doing prescriptive legislation, we as Parliament are thinking of going for overarching legislation that gives very broad guidelines rather than being over-prescriptive. Now, with broad guidelines, we might find the need for new institutions, we might find the need for new spaces. And one of the things that we've been thinking through with Waziri and the two Katibus is how to provide for a space for sandboxing that is properly regulated but is not stifling in terms of allowing innovation to happen.
But we are gathered here this morning to witness the inauguration of a team of technocrats who have been specially identified and selected to lead our country in policy, legal, and legislative reforms in various areas or facets that fall within the ambit or functional domain of the Ministry of Information, Communication, and the Digital Economy. And accordingly, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, there is need, which we recognize, to align the various legal and policy instruments that govern our mandate and even that of the sagas and entities under the ministry to changes, emerging issues in the operational environment. That effective alignment is imperative and is also a critical success factor for us moving forward, because this operational environment is too dynamic. If at any given point in time we think that the ICT broadcasting and telecommunication tectonic plates are going to settle anytime soon, then we are living on borrowed time. Yeah? This environment is so dynamic, and every day we should be able to anticipate what's going to happen, tomorrow. Okay? That's why we are here. And therefore, we have, as a ministry so far, identified several instruments that need reform intervention in light of the changed and changing realities. A list of this instrument is available for anybody to scan or discern, but the list is, however, not exhaustive. It is only indicative based on our own thinking as a ministry, okay? It is not exhaustive at all. Therefore, the task before the team that we are gonna unveil today goes beyond dealing with the known. We want this team to explore the unknown. That is when we are going to have value proposition in this intervention, okay? Besides, we have also identified for reform various thematic areas that need to be addressed. In fact, subsequent to the operationalization of this team, in our view, this team will divide itself into various thematic areas to address specific Specific issues. How do we then justify the proposed reform agenda? Why is it necessary? This cannot be gainsaid. We have stated unequivocally that the legal framework has evolved over the past 35 years. Just to mention but a few, the Kenya Broadcasting Act, enacted in 1988. The Kenya Information and Communication Act and the Postal Corporation of Kenya Act, 1998. So we are actually 25 years down the line, and we are still operating on the basis of those legal foundations. So clearly the law governing the national broadcaster is over 35 years old, and so is that governing ICTA and also the Postal Corporation. It is therefore significant that these laws be looked at objectively in the face of the prevailing situation at the moment. A number of sagas and critical players in our sector, just to mention but a few, we have got the ICT Authority, we have the Kenya Institute of Mass Communication, we have our Konza Technopolis, which is our own envisaged version of the Silicon Savannah, are operating on the basis of legal mandates. That is not sustainable moving forward, and we have been consulting with the National Assembly on how we can fast track this so that they are anchored on a better or a more sound legal foundation. Given the changing technological environment, more changes are certainly bound to come. And in contemplating these changes, we must go beyond piecemeal and ad hoc reform instruments. The risk of inharmonious sets of laws where you have got laws which are not speaking to each other, yeah, which will be unpalatable to whatever we are trying to do is real. That is why we want to adapt a whole sector approach, so that even when we are thinking of any reforms or review of laws or policies, they must be in tandem with each other. That is why we want to adapt a whole sector approach as far as this thought process is concerned. And ladies and gentlemen, therefore, there is urgent need for an integrated approach to the legal and policy propositions to ensure synergy and to eliminate multiplication or duplicity of roles and responsibilities in the execution of our mandate. Justification for the reform in the policy, legal, and regulatory environment within our core mandate, therefore, justifies itself as follows. One, core legislations in this dynamic sector are over 25 years old. The promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 calls for effective alignment of the existing laws to the Constitution itself. The lawyers usually tell us that if you have any law that is inconsistent with any provision of the Constitution, then the Constitution does what prevails, isn't it? So imagine the Constitution, our current constitutional dispensation was promulgated or enacted in 2010, and we are operating on the basis of laws that were enacted 25 years ago, 35 years ago. So we are in real danger, which then justifies or informs the rationale for this intervention. Again, significant changes in technology have taken place over the last 25 to 30 years. There are newer emerging technologies in our operational environment. Look at AI, big data, Internet of Things, cryptocurrency, and other digital assets that need to be accommodated within our legal and policy framework. There are also new threats, risks, and challenges, such as cybersecurity, that need more effective legislation and regulation. Our ministry also has an expanded mandate of the digital economy. And in this space, over and above just over-concentrating on the challenges that we face, let us also proactively or objectively think of the opportunities that we have available at our disposal and how we can, in the execution of this mandate, take advantage of the opportunities made available to us by way of technological advancement. So let us not be labored on the challenges. Let's also think of the what? The opportunities. For example, creation of jobs as a hypothetical example. So let's also think of the positive aspect as opposed to just the challenges that we are facing. We also have the government entities, as I had stated earlier, operating on inadequate legal foundations. And then there are more private players engaged in business in this sector, and there is need for them to understand their needs and create a more supportive, enabling policy environment for the private sector. Our business as government is not to compete in business with the private sector, but to create an enabling environment for the private sector to thrive. That is why we exist, and that is why we want to think together. Tell us what you want to do, give us the guidance, the recommendations, so that we internalize and integrate in our policy, legal, and regulatory reviews. Against this background, ladies and gentlemen, the team that we are unveiling today will have specific terms of reference. One, examine the existing policy, legislative, institutional, administrative, and operational structures, systems, and strategies, and recommend comprehensive reforms in the sector. Two, identify emerging technologies and other areas that need legal and policy intervention and make appropriate policy and legislative proposals. Three, make any other assessment and advise on necessary reforms to enable the Ministry of Information, Communication, and the Digital Economy meet its present mandate and expectations in fast-changing operational environment. And of course, by extension, also meet the expectations of our diverse stakeholder segments. And then draft relevant bills, policies, and strategy documents by way of value proposition to inform our interventions moving forward. The sector working group, we are not calling it a task force. That's a term that is predominantly used in government. Task force is associated with teams which meet, come up with reports, which are never implemented. So we are calling it a sector working group, okay? So this sector working group shall remain in office for a period of 6 months, ladies and gentlemen, from the date of the publication of this notice. In fact, immediately after this, our legal team is going to proceed with the gazettement of this team, so that this team is in office effective today. We have already consulted extensively with the Attorney General and the Solicitor General. They should be able to facilitate this in the course of today. The first one is Professor Christopher Kipchumba Chepken, examiner, Faculty of Information Technology, Multimedia, University of Kenya, with a wealth spanning over 20 years. He has undertaken training in creative integration of technology for